Before we get started, before I even get on with this intro, I have planned out meticulously. I've got to ask, did you bring the s'mores this time? I swear to God. I can't be reading all these stories on an empty stomach. So I've heard from a few of you that you're liking the new campfire vibe. I've got to admit, I'm liking it too. It's something different and almost kind of relaxing. Just me, you, a microphone, and some of the scariest stories on the internet. So it's a nice mix. If you guys have got any stories from whatever state you live in and want to submit them to the series, just let me know. Either drop me an email at thathauntedshow@gmail.com or just drop me a message on any of the socials. I'm kind of pretty active on there. I'm currently planning a lot of them out in advance, so send them in quick. Also, don't forget I am going to be doing these weekly again, so I'm going to need a little bit of help. Last week, I'm using a new editing program and all that, and I used a strip silencer, which isn't as exotic as you might think. There is no stripping involved. Basically, it just muted my audio, and there was a few bits which kind of cut me out. So I've had to boost up my gain, and hopefully this sounds pretty good now. I think it does. Like I said, I need help. The only thing I ask of you is if you could spend a few seconds of your life and rate us out of 5 stars wherever you listen, and if you could just leave a few words. It really does help bump us up the charts and gets us more streams and downloads, and any new review received I will be reading out and crediting you on next week's episode. So next week, if I'm not reading out any more new ones, I'm gonna cry. Okay. Thanks to all of you who have reviewed previously and who regularly listen and enjoy the show. Honestly, words cannot explain how much I appreciate you all. I enjoy doing this, and I've missed doing this, so to actually be back here doing it all, it's really great. I'm buzzing. But without going on too much, shall we begin with the episode? So this is part 2 in our Haunted State series, and we're going to be continuing with Alaska, which was actually easier than I thought it was going to be. I really thought finding stories out of Alaska was going to be hard. I thought it was like some kind of no man's land for some reason, and maybe 10 people lived there, but you'd be surprised. I actually did really well in geography at school. It's kind of shocking that how little I know. It's a bit worrying. Let's get on with the story, shall we? This is by Beastie Fetus. What a lovely name. The first experienced aged 8. At first it would only run up and down the hallway. It would peek just around my door, and some nights it would leave me frozen in fear. I was too stiff to call out for my mother. Eventually it became brazen off my fear and would kneel down in my doorway. There it would sit before me, its bones cracked all out of place. The figure was nearly 8 foot tall. Black skin shrouded over its bones, with nothing to cushion against the creaking ligaments. Wide, far-spread eyes glowed ominous white. I still remember how it crawled to the side of my bed, like some contorted crab. When I shut my eyes tightly, it would be gone before I opened them once more, and it was back at the doorway. They couldn't touch me with my eyes closed. Interesting concept, I mean. It's like you pull a blanket over and nothing can touch you, man. This could be passed off for a young child's playful mind, if not for my parents' attention brought to it. My mother and father told me that when I was older, I only stopped complaining when a man began to stand in the hallway. I only stopped complaining when a man began to stand in the hallway. Okay, that's weird. So, there's some random dude just popped in the hallway. What? So my mother saw him first, a soft figure in a red old cape and furred clothing with worn leathers. Dude, you got a fucking cowboy ghost coming on. He was obviously Native American. Oh. I couldn't be further. I couldn't be even more wrong. He was obviously a Native American from the Alaskan tribes or North Canada. When he began to appear, the haunting ended in that house. When we moved, they surge at me violently. I expect skinwalkers and other beings regularly. What? I experienced skinwalkers and other things regularly until I was around 13. At 14, an old woman, when I lived in Germany, told me my aura was dark and that several demons have tried to follow me into her house. She had rosaries all over her rooms. Since then, I've witnessed horrifying sounds, touches, scratching on my bedpost, and other teasing horrors. Nothing really makes them go away, unless I go on certain medication or try my best to ignore everything. I've got autoimmune disorders, severe anxiety, and depression. Could these play into the attraction some dark entities have towards me? I'm no longer interested in making it end. I know it won't. I just want to know how to protect myself and learn more exactly about each thing. Now, I've spoke about this quite a bit. There's definitely a link between mentality and the spiritual side, and the spiritual side. How you're feeling, if you're feeling in a very negative mindset and just not in a good place mentally, then I do feel some energies could possibly latch onto that and start making you feel even worse. Maybe they vibe off your just negative energy. If you're really in a dark place, that's like food for them. So you often hear about possession stories, so they don't make themselves known. At first, it just seems that you're getting worse and worse until something really snaps, and then it kind of leads into the more demonic side. And demons are just, if they're real, I'm kind of on the fence with demons, but if they are real, like anything, all they've got is time, right? We as humans are severely limited in time. Like, it's almost laughable. Our time on this earth is so small and insignificant compared to them, so all they've got is time, and they can just grind you down and make you do the worst things imaginable. So that was a very positive story to start with. We got real deep real quick. So let's find the next story, shall we? This one is by Genji God. Now, I love this site and read it all the time, but what you're about to read is what has and is still happening to me. This happened to me 5 years ago when I was about 11 years old, living in Fairbanks, Alaska. My family would always rent houses at Birchwood Homes, a decent place to live outside of the army base my dad worked at. Now, being kids we were back then, we were always trying to talk to ghosts and get them to scare us, but nothing ever happened. At the moment, we were trying them. Now, don't get me wrong, we weren't being mean or smarty about it, just trying to have fun. One day after school, at about 4, my mum wanted me to put something up in her room. Now, I never liked going upstairs by myself. Actually, I never liked going anywhere by myself. I would feel like someone was watching me, so I ran up the stairs to try and get it over and done with as quickly as possible. But as I turned the corner to my mum's room, this shadow-like figure was standing there at the door. Now I was totally freaked out. I was scared and I couldn't even move. It was all black with no face, just like a hood kind of thing. And it was kind of hunched over like when you try to get a dog to come to you. Now, being the expert I was with ghosts, that's a line. You're an expert with ghosts, kid. I turned right around and basically jumped down the stairs. Yeah. Now, I mean, I'll give it to you, that is probably the smartest decision you could do in a situation like that. Some weird hooded creature comes up at you and, yeah, you're fucking off. Well done. With my mum being so highly religious at the time, I didn't want to scare her, but she was wondering why I was so scared. So I told her that I'd just seen an angel in her room. Dude, so you don't want to scare your mum or anything, like, fair, I understand that, she's a religious person, you don't want to say there's some hunched over creepy ass cryptid demon thing in her room, but now you're getting her hopes up, you're saying, oh yeah, it was an angel. Yeah, go check it out, mom. That just sounds like a recipe for disaster. If anything happens, this is now solely on you. Which she was she was really happy about. Yeah, I bet. But I knew the truth. What I'd seen was no angel. Fuck. That's tough. That night I drew in what I saw in my diary and showed it off to my sister, for we would always keep secrets for each other. Since the more things have happened, I can't wait to share. And boy, do they get creepier. But this one is where it all really started. And there is a diary entry actually attached, so Birchwood Homes, Fairbanks, and there's a drawing of this creepy looking, scribbled out, hunched over thing. I'm not about it. It kind of looks like if a kid's just doodled with like a black pen and gone a bit crazy. I can't draw anyway, so I'm not criticising, but definitely a good story. Creepy, kind of harsh that you got your mum to go in there as well. That was a bit tough. But hey, let's find the next one, shall we? That was nice. 2 little short ones to start with. Okay, so this one is a bit longer. This one's by Christine021. I haven't ever really experienced paranormal activity until I moved to this house around 3 years ago, and it isn't even that old. I've had dreams all my life that would scare me to death, and once in a while I'll have a night terror. These dreams are set on like another world with scary people. I'm terrified of the dark, and odd things have happened to me in public, but I just shrug them off. I've always felt like something's watching me or with me, though sometimes they feel good, sometimes, most of the time, they're bad. Like one time, it's happened maybe at least 4. I had gym class but forgot something in the locker room. So I'd go back and I'm by myself, right? Then I'll hear someone walk up next to me and sometimes say something random, but I turn and walk around like no one is there. And some of the locks on the lockers would be shaking like when you lock them. But I'll get back on topic now. So my house was built around 95 to 97 and stands out in my neighbourhood. It's cedar with a huge yard, and every other house has a small yard and painted house. You always hear people walking, running, or jumping upstairs, mainly in my little sister's room. My whole family can hear that, and sometimes we'll all hear the toilet randomly flush, or something upstairs. At least he's considerate. I mean, sometimes I forget to flush. It happens. One of the weirdest things that happened a few months ago, me and my mum were not getting along at all. So when my family was eating dinner, she said all these things to just infuriate me. Then my dad chose her side. So I was about to tell my dad the reasons why, but mum told me just to go to my room. I was so incredibly angry, I stomped out and slammed my door, something that I never do. Then later that night and next morning, my family individually came up to me except for my dad, and wouldn't quit asking if I turned off the light when I walked out. I screamed at them no, I am the only one who could have reached the light switch from the way the table is facing, and I never did. There would be no point. They couldn't even get it back on for most of the night. My mum and sister said they thought I was so mad that maybe my energy made it go out. Then I saw this about 7 to 9 foot tall hooded figure shadow in the entryway when I was home alone once sitting on the couch. Again with the hooded figure. There's some weird kind of hooded figure phenomenon in Alaska. Maybe that's something we can look into. That sounds quite interesting. These are like 2 completely random stories at completely different dates. This one's in 2012 and I think the other one was fairly recent, so yeah, weird phenomena going on over in Alaska. Also 7 to 9 foot tall. Jesus Christ, at least like NBA fucking ghosts, man. Jesus. For some reason, I heard something jump off the stairs, and I saw its shadow on the entryway closet doors, but I was in shock and couldn't react or move my body, so I shut my eyes and somehow knew what was around the corner. It was so real. The scariest thing is that I'm the only person with a bedroom downstairs, and I share it with my younger sister, who is not home much. Every time she's gone, I hear and almost feel people walking outside the door in the hallway, living room and kitchen. It's like they're having a party or something. I sometimes hear them talking, and I pretend it's my parents watching TV at 2 a.m. in the morning, and even though they fall asleep by 11 the latest, I walk out there and there's nothing. So many scarier things have happened at that house, but I might put those in other stories. Please tell me what's wrong with me. Now, I don't want to say that anything's wrong with you. If anyone is experiencing these things, it doesn't mean something's necessarily wrong with you. It's not like a really bad thing. Some people are just more in tune with spirituality and energy, And that's all I believe spirits are. If you're kind of in tune with this energy and things along those lines, then you are going to experience more things. And like I said in the previous episode, if you're kind of looking into more of the paranormal, more kind of things like that, you're kind of welcoming it into your life. So the more you look into it, the more weird shit is going to happen. Trust me, I've experienced this a lot. I am a ghost expert, and no, I'm kidding. I do not know. Anyway, if anyone says they are an expert in this, there is bollocks, because no one is an expert in this. There's no specific science for all of this, and that's the most interesting thing about this, because anyone, whatever your story, could be true. I will take everything at face value, however absurd it may sound, because we don't know what's out there. Sometimes people may really open up and tell this story about like the worst day of their life, and it could just sound, alright, let's just say hypothetically, it could just sound like fucking ridiculous, right? But if you kind of say that to someone, you're like, oh, that's just bollocks. Like, that's just ridiculous. That would never have happened. You don't know that could have actually happened, and that person maybe believes that did happen. So who are you to kind of say that, nah, that's ridiculous, I know ghosts, that shit doesn't happen, so don't worry about it. If someone comes to you and they're in need, they're trying to tell you a story, just listen, be an ear, that's all you need to do. The next story is by Quixo, however you pronounce that, Quixoticqt. Damn, they've made a lot of stories on here, Jesus. My mother was in a little village called White Mountain, Alaska at the time. Its population is about 100 to 150 people, where everyone is related to everyone. That's how I imagined Alaska, right? Before I started doing this episode. Also, it scares me when they say everyone's related to everyone, because how's there a population? I mean, maybe a little bit of, inbreeding going on. God knows. At night there would be family brawls, mostly just the parents, so the kids would go outside and cry sometimes. My mum would go open the door and call the kid in and tell them to come over and stay the night until their parents settled down and they were safe to go back home the next day. One night my mother heard one of those kids, and half asleep and half awake, she went to the door to go and open it. Right when she put her hand on the doorknob, "No, don't open that door," she heard. She was fully awake then. Okay. She heeded that warning, even though she was kind of annoyed that the crying kept going on. Even when she woke up, she could still hear the crying all the way up until the sun started to shine. Eager to hear if my mother and brother heard it, she went over to drink some coffee and discuss the whole ordeal. My mother said, "Good morning, you guys. Did you hear the crying last night?" My grandmother used to be rude sometimes, so abruptly said, "No, I heard nothing last night," and continued fixing breakfast. Later on that day, my mother spoke to her brother and gave her the 411. He said, not long ago there used to be a family, and in that family was a pregnant woman. For some reason, they needed to go to Golovin, another village about a 20 to 25 mile travelling distance away on foot. Right when they reached the place where the forest meets the tundra, she went into labour, and she had a baby under a tree. She wrapped her baby and took care of the mess, and while doing so, one of the family members said, "Look, the sun's going down. We won't be able to see where we're going pretty soon." So all of them hurried and gathered all they could and left. They all got to Golovin and started to unpack their things when finally the lady realised and said, "Oh God, you could probably tell where this is going." She said, "Oh, fuck, I forgot my baby." So, shit, how does that happen? Does this happen? I mean, I'm pretty bad. I forget my phone and keys all the time, but I mean, I think I'd remember a baby. So they all went back to look to... Oh, God, relax. It's only a lost baby. Jesus Christ, I'm a terrible person. So they all went back to look to where they previously were and looked under every tree but couldn't find the baby. Now that baby's spirit sometimes comes to White Mountain, and that's what you heard last night. Okay, I'm a bit confused. So, yes, this baby was abandoned, it was left, and presumably maybe wild animals got to it, and it clearly passed, unless it's like fucking raised by monkeys in Tarzan shit. I don't know. Actually, in Alaska, it's probably raised by like wolves or some kind of shit. I'm not sure why I'd be traveling to a whole another village. Also, it reminds me of The Witcher 3. Like, if you guys have played that game, like, I fucking love it, man. I've spent thousands of hours in that game. It's worrying. I won't lie. But there's a mission where you've got to save the Baron's baby, and it's like this this floating fetus, and you've got to just follow it about and do what it wants and calm it down. It's a good mission. But another thing that really confuses me is, who was the voice that said, no, don't open that door? It wasn't anyone in the family, and I mean, if it's just a crying baby, it doesn't sound that malevolent. I was thinking maybe along the lines of like Black Eyed Children. I don't know. It's just a crying baby. I don't know how malevolent that can really be. Unless it's just pissed at humans because like it was just born and it was fucking left, and it's like, fuck these big people. I'm gonna go on a tyrant and fucking destroy every adult I see. Good fucking story. I really like the sound of this one. This one's a bit longer, and it's by Dragon Walker. Nice, almost like my COD name. If you're playing COD, just add me. I'm Ghost Walker, by the way. And just hit me up. I'm in the top 1,000 on ranked play, and just if you want to hit me up, let's play. Also, I just got a notification. Yo, the new COD has just been announced. I will be looking into that after this episode. Don't get distracted. Oh shit! Don't get distracted. We've still got loads of stories to go. Come on, we can do this. I can do this. There's no one else in it. Apart from the spit. Hello! After trying to put my desire for children on hold for almost 8 years, my fiancé decided that he was ready to try for kids. He wasn't the man in my life for all 8 years, although I wish he could have been. Sorry, my fucking, allergies are really kicking up. I think maybe I've got a window open and, pollen's getting in. Fuck. Jesus. The last possible date of conception was January 26, 2011. The reason I know this is because I used FAM, Fertility Awareness Method. My first ultrasound was on March 9th. I was crushed when the doctor revealed to me that I had what was called a blighted ovum. The best way I can describe this is a genetic miscarriage. There was something so wrong with the baby that when the egg and the sperm met, the embryo just didn't complete. I had an empty amniotic sac inside my body. I couldn't believe that without being pregnant, I had tripped over $200 worth of pregnancy tests. The doctor examined the amniotic sac and would have fooled my body into thinking it was pregnant. The doctor also said that my amniotic sac was not as far as long as it should have been, as he was measuring from a conception date of just 2.5 weeks before the last possible date. He said to come back in a week. We would do another ultrasound and then discuss our options. I was crushed, but dealing with it. A week later, and there was some growth in the sac, and a little lump had developed inside it. The doctor told me to come in a week later and send me on my way. That weekend I went to my local Fred Meyer's to do a little shopping. I sat in my car and ate a pretzel with cheese. I want a pretzel with cheese, that sounds good. It was getting warm outside and the day was sunny. Imagine my surprise when a large shiny black raven descended, landing between my driver's side door and the vehicle next to me. I kept eating, but was having fun watching the raven hop around near my car. It's not often I get to see the ravens up close, and this was as good as it was going to get, I thought. In about the span of the time it took me to blink, 5 more ravens came swooping in, surrounding my car. My car was the only one in the centre of the action, despite being surrounded by hundreds of other vehicles. The first raven hopped on the hood of my car. He tilted his head from side to side, hopping back and forth. While normally ravens make their harsher croaking or call, this raven was chirping at me. That's the best way I could describe it. It was like a soft little bird purr. And when he came up and pecked on my windshield, I rolled down the window a smidge and tossed a piece of pretzel on the ground. While feeding the wildlife is probably not the best idea, they were eating other human food that they had acquired out of dumpsters, so I figured, what would hurt? Apparently the raven didn't care for my hand coming out the window, so he hopped back down to the ground. He skipped past the pretzel 3 or 4 times and then scooted behind my car. Then another raven hopped onto the hood of my car. At this point I realised I wasn't the only person to notice what was happening. One of the parcel boys was rounding up carts nearby and seemed just as amazed as I. But he was not the only one. I did a quick survey of the parking lot. Even with the large crowd, no one seemed to be paying attention to what was happening. Either they couldn't see or just didn't care. The second raven spotted the food I had tossed out, jumped down, retrieved it, and perched himself back up on the hood of my car. He also made a soft little chirp noise, like the first bird made. While he ate, the raven kept his eye on me through the glass. When he had enough to eat, he dropped the bread and jumped onto my passenger side mirror, back onto my windshield where I got the most amazing picture, and then flew off. As I went about my day, I paid attention to how I felt. How the birds behaved struck me as very odd and seemed to impart that there was more going on than I could see. But I felt calmer, almost comforted, and everywhere I went there were always 2 or more ravens, always. At my next ultrasound, the doctor told me he could finally see a fetal pole that was pulsing. That meant that the baby was still alive. I really was pregnant after all. The first ultrasound had just been too early to tell anything, and because the doc was basing his timing of my pregnancy off a different day, his calculations for how far along I was were off by a lot. I practically skipped out of the doctors. I was so giddy with joy that I went to see a friend of mine. She grew up on a reservation on the lower 48 and is way more sensitive than I could ever hope to be. As we stood on the sidewalk in front of her business, it happened. I happened to look across the street. Perched on top of the streetlight were 2 of the biggest, blackest ravens I'd seen yet. I pointed these out to my friend, and she told me that they were the first ravens she'd seen all day. She told me to do some research to see what I could find, and the whole time we talked, the ravens just stayed across the street. The next day I started digging around on the internet and came across something interesting. Ravens didn't always mean carnage and death. They meant mystery, the universe, the creator, the ultimate recycler. The many different meanings of ravens made me smile. The raven is an air element, which would coincide with the birth sign as well. Another tidbit of information I gleaned was that you don't choose the raven as a totem animal. The raven chooses you. According to a couple of different websites I found, my baby would be born under the raven sign. As I was reading, I tried on the pieces of information. I discarded each like a shirt that almost fit, but something wasn't just sitting right. When I saw that my baby would be born under the sign of the raven, it hit me in the gut, chest, heart, whatever. The ravens weren't there for me, not really. They were there for my baby. I really thought about all the times I'd seen these beautiful birds. It was kind of freaky, but I had to laugh because when I went to the stores to shop, they would take turns watching me like sentries. The next weekend came and it was time to run some errands. As I headed down the road, I realised over the course of the week I'd been so tied up that I hadn't really been out of my house, and thusly hadn't seen my black feathered companions in many days. A couple of miles down the road from where I live, both sides of the road were lined with lights, the kind that hang over 4-lane highways. As I approached the area, I had a what the blazes moment. On each overhanging light were perched at least 2 ravens, but mostly 3 or 4 on each. I had this morbid thought that it looked like a morning of ravens. They were lined up like funeral mourners to watch my car drive by. Not one bird swooped off the lights, jumped around, or even pecked at its fellow birds. They just watched. I was struck by the sincerity of it, but refused to consider the icky feeling I had within my gut. After that, I didn't see them much anymore, but I didn't think anything of it. Almost a week later, I went in for an emergency ultrasound. Oh, man. The doctor confirmed I was having a miscarriage. While the ravens don't seem as devoted as they did when I was pregnant, I still find them keeping an eye on me when I'm out of the house. Due to their representation of mystery and thusly knowledge, when I see them now, usually when I'm upset or not in a student mindset, I ask myself what I could learn and remind myself to be open to new information and knowledge. That was quite a tough story. Yeah, I probably should have put a warning on that, but of course, I read these live with you, so maybe I'll record and put a little forewarning because, yeah, that's not pleasant, but it happens, you know. It can happen to anyone, regardless of situation. And yeah, I can't imagine anyone going through it. And if you have, you're incredibly brave, and hope things have all worked out for you. I just knew, right, when the birds are all lined up like that, it just seemed... I love birds, right? So I had to include this story just purely based off the title, but yeah, I should have read it a bit more. We've probably got time for a few more stories, and hopefully they're not quite as sad as that one. This one is by Alex Z. I was 12 when this occurred. I came home from school, walked through the doorway, and had just started to take off my shoes. My mum walked up to me, not saying a word, but it looked as if she had just woken up. Very tired looking. She stared at me for a while, and I looked up and said, "Hi, Mum." She turned around, walked round the couch, down the hallway to the bedroom, still not saying a word. I thought nothing of it at the time. I ran into my brother's room where he was playing video games and started to show him something. He wanted to see it, but I wanted to show my mother first. He then said, "What are you talking about? Mum's not home." I replied, "Yeah, she is. I just saw her." I walk out of his room and look all over the house to find her, even our backyard. My brother was right. She really wasn't home. I told my family about this as soon as they got home. They found it very interesting. I want to know exactly what I saw, and this thing, whatever it was, looked exactly like my mum, and exactly like a person. Not see-through or translucent like a ghost. It was the weirdest experience ever. If anyone out there knows why or how this happened, and why was this thing appearing as my mum, please let me know. That is a really strange one. I mean, you don't really hear these stories much. The fact that it looks exactly like your mum, it could be some kind of shapeshifter, skinwalker, I don't know, but... yeah, I kind of have theories about these things. I definitely believe that spirits are energy. Whether or not they can manifest themselves as to what they look like, or actually have physical, full-body apparitions, I don't know. I couldn't even begin to speculate about this. I don't know enough. I just read out these stories. It's a very good story. You were 12, so you've kind of got a bit of preteen savvy. You're not quite a toddler, so you know what you saw. And so we've probably got time for one more, because this next one is pretty long. This one is by Chadwick. It was 11 PM and I was home alone. A grown man who had several paranormal encounters, and so I don't scare easily. It's a normal occurrence for household items to disappear and reappear later. It's also normal for lights to flicker around me, regardless of where I go. I'm living in a home where the previous owner died of cancer in the house. Neighbours told me the old woman spent her time gardening outside, but as the cancer took its toll, the weeds gained ground amidst the flowers, and things needed to be done that didn't get done. I smudged the house with sage and placed salt across the windowsills and doors. I also explained out loud, as well as telepathically, that she had passed away and that I purchased the home and would take good care of it. Before moving in, I repainted the interior of the home and replaced a new padding and carpet. I also remodeled the bathrooms and built a hearth for my living room fireplace. I made many more improvements to the interior of the home, so much so that it was obvious I was taking good care of the place. The ghost of the previous owner should see that and leave me alone, right? Now, despite this, I heard sounds in my attic, like someone walking over the rafters above, quietly murmuring to someone or something else. It was commonplace for me to experience cold spots in the house, especially my own bedroom. I was used to smelling rotten smells now and then, without any logical sense, so I assumed I must have passed gas without realizing it. Dude, if you're not realizing it, you've got a fucking gaping arsehole. It was likewise normal for me to lie in bed and feel the mattress compressing at the foot of the bed, and feel the slow denting of footsteps on the bed coming closer to me. I was used to being tormented in my sleep, the subject of another story perhaps. Whether it was the previous owner or someone or something else, I do not know. What I can tell you is that one day I was lying on my couch alone at night, and one of my DVD racks, which was fully loaded with DVDs, toppled over. Now this rack was 4 feet high and 2 foot wide, weighing at least 20 pounds. Only by applying force could you topple it over, yet it did. How? Now this just terrified me. Who or why? Something invisible knocked over my DVD rack and made a mess. Why? To illustrate it had the power to do so at any time? To terrify me, to let me know I'm not alone and I'm powerless against it? At the time, I was living a life of sin, with one of the worst sins imaginable being part of my past. I could not simply pray to God for help. I needed my spiritual filth scrubbed off me before I could even pray to God for help. I had resolved to 1. Get married so that I wouldn't be fornicating, and 2. Get baptized to cleanse me of my past sins in order for my prayers to be heard when I asked for help. There's better reasons to get married, dude. If you get married just to be a better person and fuck, then, man, you're not really a better person. I contacted a psychic to cleanse my house. She came to my house, walked around it, before asking me for a ladder to get up to my attic. She looked around like she was mustering all of her courage as I fetched the ladder. She went up and I waited for my wife in the living room. While she returned, she said that I must have had some serious protection during my life, because this thing attached itself to me in my childhood and brought about misery, depression, and evil in my life. The psychic said it was gone now, but this could only be the beginning. I paid her $200 for her service. Well, that's $200 you ain't gonna see again. It doesn't sound like it worked, because there's a lot left of this story. So, to be on the safe side, I contacted a different psychic, this time a man. The man did not charge me or anything to cleanse my house, but he asked me questions about my life and personality in order to get a feel for who I am. Afterwards, he told me my soul, or my spiritual aura, was really, really dark. Darker than anybody he'd ever seen. I told him nothing about my past that would lead him to draw that conclusion, but I knew he was right, and only someone with spiritual insight could know it. He said he cleared my home and my aura of the darkness. Between the both psychics, the problems at my home stopped. Well, there you go. So it wasn't a waste of $200. At work, however, oh god, here we go. So I just moved from home to work. At work, however, another object moved. A nitrogen bottle, fully charged, weighing about 30 to 40 pounds, had been sitting upright on a steel welding table. There were others in the room, but nobody came close to the nitrogen bottle. All of a sudden, the steel bottle tipped over and began rolling towards the edge of the table. Had it fallen off, the bottle could have become damaged, and it would have turned the bottle into a missile and potentially killing someone. Seeing the bottle tip over, I ran towards it and stopped it from rolling off the edge of the table. Again, it took some seriously considerable force to tip that steel bottle over. The table was perfectly level. There were strange things happening in my former home, the home from which I fled as a result of found the home I'm living in now. At this former home, my roommate asked me if my girlfriend, now my wife, was into any weird or dark religious practices. I asked him why he asked me that, and things have changed since she moved in. That his own life, their kids, hear things in that home, specifically a whistle, whenever the girls used to upstairs shower. I said, maybe it's just the water pipes. He said it was a kind of whistle that sounded like a boy getting a girl's attention, and it only ever happened when the girls took a shower, and just the girls. Downstairs, he said the family would be watching TV when the dogs, a pack of pit bulls, all looked up towards the ceiling, with their hackles raised and growled deep. The dogs did this with another hotspot, the pantry closet. While the family watched TV, sometimes the lights would turn on or off, and the TV would turn off by itself. I told my roommate that my wife wasn't a witch or a devil worshipper, that she was a sweet, kind, caring person. However, I explained to my roommate that I had been noticing lights flicker, and that I found a bat in my room one morning. That's fucking weird, get Aussie round. But the worst thing I observed was a giant toolbox resting upon a dog kennel, full of heavy tools. The toolbox easily weighed 50 pounds. Now, it just lifted off the dog kennel and was thrown inside the kennel. It was loud. At home, it was just me and one of the kids. She was on the front porch and heard the slam, asking me what just happened. I told her exactly what I saw and heard, as well as I told my roommate when we were discussing paranormal events in the home. Then I remembered a few other events and reminded my roommate about them. We had 2 entrances to the home, a side door and a front door. Each door connected to the kitchen downstairs. One day my roommate and I took a drive someplace and we returned. One of the dogs was outside of the house. How did he get out of his kennel and even get out of the house? The front door was closed and locked. The side door, however, was laying down on the ground outside. Not just the door, but the door jamb too. Something had kicked this door so hard that it broke the door loose, even the jamb itself. Now that door jamb had been nailed into place. Only a tremendous amount of force could have been used to blow out that door. The dog that was let loose from its kennel was the size of a Great Dane dog, now a massive dog. One that I personally saw mauling a 350-pound pig like it was breakfast. Nobody in their right mind, no intruder, no burglar would have kicked their dog's kennel and risked the certainty of being mauled. Furthermore, I found my own dog's kennel door was unlocked and open, but my dog, a male pit bull and a sweetheart to other dogs but a biter of people, was laying in the safety of its kennel. Why? Because the bigger male pit bull that we found outside had a habit of biting and mauling my dog, as well as the other male pit bulls in the house. By unlocking and opening my dog's kennel, along with the bigger male's kennel, the thing responsible for doing this was trying to ensure that my dog got mauled by the monster male. It was a deliberate act. No human being would have done so because my dog consistently attacks strangers. And again, this monster-sized pit bull was such a size that only a madman would have even thought about letting him loose, while being in the house with the dog. Letting them both loose at the same time was an evil attempt to get my dog hurt or killed. The larger pit bull had sent my dog to the vet for stitches more than once, as well as any other males. In fact, it was because of this pit bull's violence that one of our dogs were left in the kennels. I swear to God, whatever happened, each kennel door was evil. Knowing that it would happen again to my own dog, I swear to God, whatever opened this kennel door was evil. Again, about the kitchen side door, how much force would it have taken to boot out that door? And door jamb, from the side of my house, leaving the door on the ground. It would have been a crazy amount of force, and it was the exterior door too, so it was heavy as it was stout. About me, I was exposed to domestic violence as a child and subjected to abuse for many years. I grew up with hatred in my heart. I prayed to the devil as a child to kill or otherwise ruin them for what they had done to me. And I would communicate with something dark and evil towards the end, but telepathically. The cost of revenge was my soul. Since we are talking about eternal hell, I never gave up my soul, but I asked about giving the devil souls of other people instead. I never knowingly did, just exploring options. Jesus Christ, this sounds like it's about to get dark. In that house, my stepsister's infant daughter died of SIDS, and the baby's mother complained to me twice of seeing someone in the house. When I searched the whole house, I found nobody. She said it was a dark figure, and didn't get a good enough glimpse at him to describe the details. He was seen walking into the bathroom from the hallway. 2 times she saw shadow people in that house. When she turned 16 and moved out to go live with her uncle, saying there was just too much tension and evil in that house. At the time, I just assumed it was a human intruder who must have escaped through the bathroom window. She was petrified. When I was 13, I found myself committed to a child psychiatric hospital. I began playing games like light as a feather, stiff as a board. I also played with Ouija boards. Now that's a good idea. Shit. I read books on witchcraft spells and continued to telepathically communicate with something evil. But it was not scary evil to me. At the time, I think it was passing itself as a friendly spirit in order to fool me, because it later showed its true face when I was 15. It attacked me in my sleep. Again, my nocturnal attacks are something for another posting. It reminded me that we had a deal and that I hadn't fulfilled my end of the bargain. In response, I said, "You aren't real. You're just my own mind talking back to me." It asked me how to prove its existence to me. I replied by suggesting that it tell my friends to talk to me, saying they had been contacted by demons that just wanted to prove that they were real. I joke you not, that week I was at school when I get a call from the dean's office ordering me to come down to the office. When I was in his office, he explained that one of the students is crying and screaming and is just hysterical, saying that she was being tormented by demons, that she should contact me, and I was the only one who could help her. What the fuck? This story's getting weird, man. The girl's name was Nicole, and I never saw her again. I told the dean to tell her to pray to Jesus Christ and ask forgiveness for her sins, and then ask God to make the demons go away. What? This is bizarre. The dean would not allow me to see her. I think he was startled by my response, since I had long hair, wore a jean jacket with an AC/DC patch on the back that said Highway to Hell. I listened to Slayer, King Diamond, Merciful Fate, Metallica, and enjoying the newly emerging death metal scene during the 80s. So they proved that they are real, and after that, they began tormenting me in my sleep. Again, another story. Without going into details about my sleep torment, I'll just say I experienced reoccurring nightmares, sleep paralysis, and horrible dreams about possession. There is more I can say on the topic, but I might be posted in different sections. Thanks for reading my experiences. Today I am Christian, I am baptized, and I don't communicate with evil entities. I am a loner Christian, and I pray silently whenever I do pray. Dude, that was quite a long story. That was a lot to take in. Let me just scroll back over this. Yeah, there's so much going on. It's quite crazy. Jesus. So obviously, it's really bad that you had an abusive childhood. That's terrible, and it brought on these feelings of kind of neglect and darkness, which obviously stuck with you and resonated, like we mentioned in the first story. These kind of spirits attached onto you at a very young age, and they started to kind of vibe off your energy and potentially made you feel even worse. And then it moved on to, demonic activity in your teenage years, where it got another girl to speak to you because it just wanted to prove it was real, which is scary to think that it could do that just to prove a point. Like, what could it do if it really wanted to do something terrifying? And that's pretty horrific. Jesus. So, I won't be sleeping tonight. I hope you guys do sleep. If you don't sleep, just don't blame me. That is going to do it for this episode. Thank you for sticking around, and I'm glad you are enjoying this Haunted States of America series. We will be back next week with a whole new episode and a whole new state, so stay tuned. It's going to be fun. Also, I will be having little breaks in between where we might do a different type of episode, but I'm going to continue focusing mainly on this series of Haunted States because I think it is pretty fun. Yeah. That's it. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. If you did like this, please give us a review. It really helps. You can literally say, Lou was good. And give us 5 stars. It would be amazing and it would make my day. Like I said, I will credit you and read you out in the next episode. So thank you guys again for doing everything that you do. And stay safe, stay spooky, and good night.